Now, while I like to consider myself as being in the relationship business, sales inherently is just still part of the equation. So what I would like to talk to you about in this video are ways that we can better implement objection handling strategies for more conversions in 2022. So this topic actually came up from the Market Authority Academy. It's my signature mentorship program where I am working with agents to help them fortify all the facets of their business to be more scalable and sustainable and ultimately more profitable. A lot of this looks like helping them with their marketing and system strategies, but of course, selling skills, really struggling that with my lisp right now. Selling skills is a really important part of being able to close business as well. And this week we actually had our monthly objection handling coaching call where we really focused on what objections members of the Market Authority Academy had been coming up against, and we worked on role playing through some of these different objections. And so I figured it would be fun to share some of the principles that I teach here on YouTube for you. I'm going to share with you the 4 key elements of handling a true objection to the sales process, and also walk through an example that can help illustrate how these work in the real world. Now, the first thing that I want to point out is a lot of times objections are not necessarily an opportunity for us to change somebody's mind. It's more an opportunity to offer education, to offer unique solutions, right? To kind of offer a different path forward. So while I don't really believe that you can truly go and change somebody's mind, I do think that you can offer an alternative path that actually gets them closer to where they ultimately want to be. That's really how I approach objection handling. So the first step in accomplishing that is, number 1, when you are met with an objection in a sales conversation, the first thing that you want to do is acknowledge and affirm. The most important thing that we can do in terms of helping clients get closer to their goals is practice empathy. And a really great way to do that is just by letting them know that we hear them and we hear their concerns. So often it's easy to forget that we're talking about people's largest investment, which is their home. This is a really big deal to people. And so when they have valid concerns about what a successful home purchase sale actually needs to look like for them, the first thing that we need to do is acknowledge and affirm their concern. So for the purposes of this video, just for example, let's use the objection of, oh, the market's crazy right now, I want to rent for another year. This might be an excuse that a home buyer has to not enter the market because they're either afraid of how quick the market is moving, they don't know where they ultimately want to buy yet, or they're just afraid of the affordability aspect. Now, if I was having a conversation with a prospective buyer, maybe I've already showed them a couple of houses and they've gotten beat out on a couple of offers. They come to me saying, Steph, the speed of the market is just too much. I want to hold out. I'm going to re-sign my lease and wait for another year. If I'm acknowledging and affirming this objection, I'm saying, oh, I hear you. This market is totally crazy. I know you've really kind of had a tough go at the last couple of offers. I hear you that you want to wait for another year. I want to talk a little bit more about what that means to you. So we're acknowledging and affirming that, yes, I hear you that the market is crazy, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. Instead of straight up saying, no, don't do that, prices are going to keep on rising. We want to just take a moment and level with them and let them know that we're on their team. This leads us to number 2, dig a little deeper. Now, it's something that I like to think of, which is the thing is not always the thing. And a lot of times the objection is not always the objection. So for example, the excuse of the market's too quick, I want to wait for another year. There's usually something else that's going on there. And it's going to be different for every buyer. So we don't want to just assume that we know what the real problem here is. You want to stay curious and ask a little bit more about, well, what does waiting for another year do for you? And not in a judgmental way, genuinely be curious. I hear you. And honestly, if I was in your position, I would probably be thinking the same thing, but I want to make sure that you and I are totally on the same page. So can you tell me what that's going to do for you if we wait for another year, just so that I'm clear on the goal? Keep asking questions until you get to the core objection. Now, they might say something like, well, Stefanie, the market's crazy and I don't want to pay for a home. That still might not be the core objection. You can continue asking, oh man, I hear you. It does seem like prices are going up really quickly. Why are we afraid of the home values right now? Because I remember that we had this conversation during our consultation. You seemed pretty clear on the fact that home values are rising. Why is it triggering you right now? And again, not getting super pointy finger, not like judging, just curious about what it is. You might find that there is another voice of influence that is making them second guess their home purchase at this time. You might find that they underestimated how much they wanted to have to put down. You might find that they're uncomfortable with waiving contingencies like they see other offers doing in that market. So continue to ask questions until you find the core objection. Now, number 3, this is where we get to educate. So when we do find ultimately what the core objection was, we can start to really educate them and get them out of the fear-based thinking that has ultimately led to them having an objection in this instance, and help switch them into the logical brain of thinking. Because remember, we're only going to be in one side of the brain at any given time. We're either in fear-based mode, where we're trying to get away from pain or move toward pleasure, or we're thinking rationally. Those two cannot compete. Our brain cannot think in two different ways at once. And so while we want to honor and respect the biological need to ultimately find ourselves in a fear-based, irrational thinking mindset, we want to give them a space to process through that, figure out what's triggering that fight or flight mode, right? And get them into a place of actually creating a logical plan to get out of that. So for example, if through digging a little deeper, you find that the core objection is they think that the market is going to stop being so competitive after 12 months and there will be more options for them to purchase, that's a valid thought. They may truly be right in terms of thinking that there is going to be more inventory and more options that will be less competitive for them 12 months from now. And you can say that through educating them through this process. But what we want to do is take it a step further and say, yeah, I hear you. That makes sense to me for sure. What I want to offer is a moment to think about what factors are going to result in more inventory on the market. And from my standpoint, this is exactly what I would say in this situation. From my standpoint, there are going to be 2 core factors that are going to impact how competitive the market is right now, how much demand we're feeling in terms of how much supply is out there. The first thing is going to be interest rates, and the second thing is going to be home values. The reason these are 2 factors that are going to impact how much competition is out there is it's going to impact affordability. So let's have a conversation about where your affordability might be 12 months from now. And now we're kind of talking not necessarily about theory, like what we think the market might be 12 months from now, but instead, what are they ultimately willing to pay to trade out that level of competition? For example, you might have seen my market outlook video where plenty of economists are forecasting another double-digit year of home values appreciating. Now, if I were to have a client who's already worried about affordability, if I were to have a client think, well, I'll just wait 12 months until there's more options, how much are they willing to pay for that? Are they willing to pay another 16% for the rising home values and whatever the interest rate is going to do in that amount of time, right? So this is where we can have those educational conversations and say, listen, I hear you. I want you to have the best, most successful home purchase possible. I know it's challenging right now, but let's take a moment and get really rational about this and think about ways that we can prepare ourselves to make a really solid decision here. And this leads us to step number 4, is to offer creative solutions. We want to offer alternative solutions or a different path forward that's going to really speak to the concern or the fear, which is totally valid in our client's mind. We want to speak to that and offer a solution that's going to account for that and help them feel more empowered going forward. So for example, I would literally be doing the math with my client in this situation. If they said that they wanted to wait 12 months, I would say, just for funsies, let's do the math. Your purchase price right now is at $400,000. If, let's just say, the market went up another 16%, the same house that we're looking for today is going to cost you $464,000. Who knows what the interest rate is going to do between now and then, but let's say it goes up another point to 4%, or whatever you think that it might be 12 months from now. And then you can even run those calculations on something like mortgagecalculator.org just to find some range for them to understand what that risk of waiting it out might actually cost them. And this is where I would say, listen, if you're okay with that plan and the trade-off of paying X amount for less competition and more options, I'm down with that. We can make that plan right now, and I'll make sure to support you throughout the whole way, because the most important thing to me is you getting into a really great situation that you feel good about. But if that doesn't sound good to you, let's find ways to make this competitive market more palatable to you, and talk about ways that your next offer can stand out. What do you say? Now, of course, you can run through this scenario with literally any objection. And once you really nail down these 4 things, acknowledge and affirm, digging deeper, educating, and then offering an alternative solution, once you really nail those 4 characteristics of overcoming an objection, you'll never have to overcome another objection, because you'll also be able to bake that into your marketing to help prepare and educate your clients before they even get to that point. So what do you think? I hope that you found this helpful. I would love to know if you have any questions, or if you'd like me to maybe even handle another objection that you've heard live on this channel. So if you're into that, leave those comments below. I would love to have a dialogue there with you. And if you are needing a little assistance here, if you're finding that your sales skills need a little attention, I invite you to apply to the Market Authority Academy, where we are working on this stuff every month with our agents. All the details are in the caption below. I would love to hear more about your story and what challenges you're experiencing, and share ways that I can help. Thanks so much for tuning in. Till next time, keep on crushing it.